But this session is really about shipping and how the shipping industry in different ways can contribute also to solving the many challenges that we see in the Baltic Sea. And I'm very pleased first to introduce Fredrik Larsson, who is the Senior Policy Advisor at the Swedish Ship Owners Association. So Fredrik, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Is this on? Is this thing on? Yeah? Great.
Ja, vad hade den in då? Fyller inte det?
Okay, there we go. Right, thank you very much. I'm very glad to see so many of you stayed until the bitter end, so to speak. It's actually a maritime term. Nevertheless, my name is Fredrik Larsson. I work mainly with environmental matters for the Swedish Ship Owners Association. And I've been invited here to give you a little talk on what shipping can do in terms of sustainable shipping, but I've chosen to both give you an idea of what shipping can do, but also what you as municipalities can do in order to support us to become more sustainable. First, some figures. Don't hold me accountable. This is approximate figures. I recently learned that there are 1,500 municipalities surrounding the Baltic Sea. 90 million citizens living close to the Baltic Sea. But perhaps you didn't know that there is approximately 200 ports in the Baltic Sea, and that every single day there are about 2,000 ships plying the Baltic Sea waters. That's quite impressive. So the problem then in terms of the Baltic Sea and the environment, well, I'm not here to tell you about the problem because you have already told us, the shipping industry, what the problem is, and it's up to us to sort of solve it. Both oil and chemical pollution, we have solid waste in the form of plastics, which I have here, we have the eutrophication, and of course we have air emissions. And you can see on the little picture on the left-hand side the traffic density in the Baltic Sea. You can see there, the more greener, the more traffic it is. And there are some highways of the sea here. It's quite impressive to see this. So, all these environmental issues, mainly dealing with eutrophication, there are a lot of regulations out there. The IMO, the International Maritime Organization, is the body governing shipping on a global basis. That is the shipping industry's global regulator. We as a shipping industry stands behind IMO at every day. We are not so much in favor of local or regional legislation because we are a global shipping industry needs global regulations. But most notably here, up in the Baltic and also up in the North America, you can see the dark green areas. We have some regulations which are quite significant for shipping. One of them is regulating SOx, that's sulfur emissions. That is the sulfur emission area. We also have regulations which will come into force sometime 2021 with regards to nitrous oxides, NOx. We also have regulations which will come into force 2019 and 2021 for passenger ships when it comes to sewage. Sewage will no longer be allowed to be dumped in the Baltic Sea, and this is highly applaudable. So, in terms of sustainable shipping, what is it we as a ship owners can do? The shipping industry, what can we do? Well, first of all, we can comply with rules and regulations. And not only could, we shall. It's quite easy. We can also apply best practices in a lot of the areas in terms of environment. We can engage in various partnerships with ports, terminals, cargo owners, and shippers, where we can perhaps apply a higher standard than that set of the international regulations. Because it costs money. It costs money to comply with regulations. And if you go over and atop of the regulations, then it costs even more money, and someone got to pay for it. One issue which is on everybody's lips is minimizing fuel consumption, because the less fuel we consume on board, the less emissions we generate. And fuel costs money, so every drop of fuel saved is money earned. It's money on the bank. So more or less every single ship, every ship owner are minimizing their fuel consumptions. The market is there. We don't need any regulation for that. We can also try to minimize other sorts of wastes, which is then in turn producing emissions or other type of wastes. It could be to the water, it could be to the air. Improve energy efficiency. There's quite a lot of talking about energy efficiency, both internationally, but also in the EU, I should say. And that's also something the ship owners are doing every day. How can we improve energy efficiency? Something which is perhaps not that often considered is educating the crew, investing in the human capital, as some people say. But it all comes down to how can we get the crew to operate our ships more environmentally friendly. It's a very, very important subject, and that's something we all invest in. And then, of course, it's quite easy to say to make use of port reception facilities. And what is a port reception facility? That's basically a garbage can in the port, where ships can land their garbage. Very simple, well, I would assume. But what I said in my previous slides, that's very much the standard. That's for everybody. But then within our association, and there are other associations as well, we had a look on this and we said, well, we can do this better. How can we do this better? Because we believe we should do it better. So we had a lot of discussions and we ended up with a document which we call the Climate Roadmap. It's about 2 years old now. It focuses on how we can reduce our environmental footprint, but also how we could stay competitive by applying those extra measures. And this is a document which we have sent to the Swedish government and together and to all the international community, and it's been quite well received. And some people even say that we are too bold in going this far. But one of the tools we developed in order to meet these the climate roadmap, the challenge, the vision we have in this, is actually a collaboration tool which we call the Zero Vision tool. And it's displayed here by those arrows, where we see that we can increase growth, we can have increased prosperity, increased maritime transport, but also we can decrease the impact we are having on the environment. In this document, we have this little slide here. Because we said, or we found in the very beginning, that we can do more. We can reduce our impact by at least 30%. And we put it out in this document, which is our vision, to reduce our emissions by 30% until 2030. And that is quite possible, we said, a couple of years ago. But we also said that we're not going to be happy with only 30%. We're going to go down to zero, or at least we're going to have that as a vision to come down to zero emissions, both to the water and both to the air. And this is displaying CO2 emissions, but we are talking about all sorts of emissions. We call it the zero vision. And as I said, we can reduce our impact with 30%, and it's actually possible already today. And this ship here is, as we speak, being constructed in China. And by using the latest technology in technical appliances on board and the latest design of hull and propeller, we can reduce emissions. And this particular ship here will use LNG, or liquefied natural gas, as the fuel, rather than heavy fuel oil or marine diesel, which is most common. So as you can see, well, according to calculations, the impact from this ship will be much less compared to a traditional ship. We will reduce the particles by 99%, sulfur emissions by 99%, NOx reduction by something like 84%, and if we use biogas and non-fossil gas, then we can reduce the CO2 emissions by 50%. This vessel is being built as we speak, and there will be a number of those ships plying the Baltic Sea in the future. And in the past couple of years, we have seen other ship types, which is also going further and above existing regulations. We also have a company within our membership who are driving a project where they will run ships on methanol. It's quite impressive. Methanol. That's a fuel which has never been used in the shipping industry in the past. So there are drivers, and we are doing what we can in order to build a sustainable shipping industry. But now, since I have you here, I would like to show you or give you some ideas on what you as a municipality can do in order to sustain or to support the sustainable shipping industry. What you can take home when you go home to meet your local government, etc. So I have a little wish list for you. So please take out your pen and paper. And it's not about more regulations, because we have a whole raft of regulations coming. It covers more or less every single emission you can think about. So this is not what I'm going to talk of. I'm not going to ask you to come up with more regulations, because I don't think we need any. But rather, sign the existing conventions and then enforce them. On this slide here, I have taken it from the IMO website. It's only a couple of weeks ago since this was updated. And there are a number of international conventions coming from the IMO, which some states surrounding the Baltic Sea have not acceded to. You should go home and ask your local government, why haven't you signed up for this convention? But most importantly, enforce existing regulations. We heard recently in the session out there that we need to implement existing regulations. And that is vital. It is vital. Because the shipping industry is global, and we cannot afford to have a level playing field looking like this. We all got to have a level playing field. As I said in one of my earlier slides, we have regulations on SOx, sulfur emissions. They entered into force a little bit over 2 years ago. And in order to comply with that, you have to buy another sort of fuel. It's cost twice as much as the heavy fuel oil which we used in the past. But still there are countries in the Baltic Sea which is not enforcing this. So there are ships who can call a port in the Baltic only paying half of the cost which it costs to comply. We need to have existing enforcement. The sanctions must be there. Otherwise it won't work, and we have a level playing field looking like this. Number 2, you can go home and ask your local port what they are doing in terms of collecting garbage from ships. Improve your port reception facilities. They should be free of charge so that ships can easily use them. And they should not only be free of charge, they should be easy to use. Because I would imagine if it would be 2 kilometers to the next bin, people will throw their trash a little bit here and a little bit there. It's not going to work. Got to be easy. People will use them, ships will use them, and then encourage their use. And when you look at this, don't forget about the sewage. We have heard a lot of sewage issues and discussions today. Ships also generate sewage, and although it will be banned, it will require states to receive the sewage. It should be possible. It's not that difficult. Number 3, incentive programs. If a ship would like to be more sustainable than what's required by regulations, perhaps we need some incentive programs. What does it cost for a ship calling your local port if it goes above existing regulations? It probably costs the same in terms of harbor fees, port fees. And what about the fairway dues? Perhaps we can provide some incentive program. We can lower the fees for ships which are more green than other ships. Dock location. Well, I was just wondering how it comes that certain cruise vessels gets the possibility or opportunity to sit next to the Royal Castle when we all know that they have been dumping their sewage out in the Baltic on the way in. Let those ships stay further out. Number 4, public procurement. Perhaps there are someone here working with it. include in your procedures that you should use sustainable shipping. By doing that, you will create a demand for sustainable ship, and by creating a demand, it will be easier for us to finance sustainable shipping. Because that's one of the hurdles today, how to find finance. Number 4, shoreside electricity. Make it possible for ships to connect to the local power grid. By doing that, you will reduce air emissions from the local port and also noise pollution, and then make ships use them. It's possible, the technology is there, just make it happen. Last, research and development. This is a cup of coffee, and it illustrates how much money each and every single Swedish citizen is contributing to the research and development within the shipping industry. Perhaps we can improve it, perhaps we can have 1 cup each. So double it, or perhaps even better, make it 3 or 4 cups. 55 million Swedish crowns goes into research and development within the shipping industry every year. It's not much. And last but not least, sustainability can only work if it's profitable. This goes hand in hand, and this is my last message. Thank you.